Hello and welcome back to my channel. It is a welcome back for me also in a way because life has gotten in the way of content creation these past couple of weeks. But I am back, I am here, and my goodness, there has been a lot of drama in these past couple of weeks. I am of course referring to the cost cap situation, this whole saga. We're going to get into it today, but before we do that, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm on an absolute mission to hit 500 subscribers by the end of 2022 because that will enable me to activate the YouTube community feature, which is going to make it a whole lot easier for me to chat more often with you all, and it's also going to make it a lot easier for me to do live streaming. So please do hit that subscribe button. And okay, let's just rip off the band-aid, get right into this cost cap saga. Hulk says no filming today, Mum. No filming today, please. I would like to play. For the sake of clarity, let's quickly revisit exactly what this cost cap is. Essentially, the Formula 1 cost cap is a maximum budget spend amount that is set out by the F1 governing body, which is the FIA. Now, the teams are all expected to adhere to this equally, and they're also expected to keep detailed financial reports, which they are then expected to present to the FIA for examination and auditing on a yearly basis. And this reporting, when I say detailed, I mean it's absolutely everything from every element of their business, whether that's the R&D on their actual cars themselves and that development, down to the cafeteria budget. And I'm not even joking, this has literally come down to sandwiches. So currently the cost cap is set at 145 million US dollars. Now, while that may seem to you and I to be a gigantic sum of money, in actual fact, once you start to add up the costs of running an F1 team, it really does dwindle down very, very quickly. When you consider, even for example, that it costs upwards of $10 million just for the logistics of getting the team and the cars from track to track over the course of 1 year, it really does all start to add up. So why do we have a cost cap at all, I hear you ask? Good question. And primarily we have a cost cap because there is a huge discrepancy between the amount of funding that the teams at the top of the grid versus the teams at the bottom of the grid have access to. And the FIA wanted to level the playing field a bit. And the cost cap essentially means that the teams at the top can't just endlessly keep improving their cars, keep testing and bringing upgrades right until the end of the season, while the teams at the bottom are struggling to even keep their cars on track with enough healthy parts towards the end of the year. So at this very moment, and over the past number of weeks and months, the FIA have been examining every team's financial reports. And when they examine each team's accounts, they essentially have to decide whether or not they have adhered to the cost cap. Now, if they've kept their noses clean and stayed within budget, they get a certificate of compliance and everyone carries on their merry way and everything is absolutely fine. However, on the flip side of this, if the FIA finds that a team has breached the cost cap, then there can be huge consequences for the team and for their drivers. And that, my friends, is where the drama really began for Red Bull.
Am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama. Maybe I am.
So to make it very simple, there are two types of breach in this cost cap situation. There's a minor breach and there's material breach. Now, the minor breach involves overspending of 5% or less of the total $145 million, and this carries less severe penalties. So you might see, deduction of drivers' championship points, you might see suspension from one or more stages of the competition. When we get into material breaches, that's where a team has overspent by more than 5% of that total budget, and it could carry penalties as far-reaching as actual exclusion from the championship and the deduction of championship trophies from the year that is being audited, which in this case is 2021. This sent the F1 world into a huge spiral because if the rumours were true and Red Bull had committed a material breach of the cost cap in 2021, we're asking, could Max Verstappen's already controversial Drivers' World Championship from last year be taken away from him and therefore awarded to Sir Lewis Hamilton? So during several media interviews over the course of the Singapore Grand Prix last weekend, Christian Horner became very upset that there were accusations being levelled at him and his team Red Bull Racing in relation to this cost cap breach. They were primarily coming from folks like Ferrari team boss Mattia Binotto and Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff, who both said essentially that it was an open secret in the F1 paddock that both Red Bull and Aston Martin were the two teams that had exceeded or breached this cost cap in 2021. Now, Christian Horner got very upset about this, he got very vocal about it, and he said that those people should be retracting those statements. In the meantime, Lawrence Stroll was playing it very smart and keeping his mouth shut, which I think is probably the wiser choice in this scenario, but is not within Christian's character. So we got what we expected. I don't necessarily know if it was the best thing for his team. A lot of people thought it was a red flag, that his behaviour sort of indicated that they were worried about the situation, even though that's not what they were trying to present. So on Wednesday 5th of October, we waited and waited and waited some more for the FIA to issue their decisions and to find out whether or which teams had been issued with their certificate of compliance. What came in the end was a late afternoon announcement that the FIA needed more time, essentially, to be completely sure on their decision, is what they were saying. They said that this is a hugely complex and difficult and slow process, and there had been an awful lot of speculation around the results, and they were essentially going to need more time, and that the new announcement date was Monday 10th of October. Now, this is of course after the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka this weekend, where Max Verstappen is largely expected to take his second consecutive World Championship title. As much as I hate what happened that fateful day in Abu Dhabi, I don't believe that stripping Max of the 2021 championship is the right decision here. For one thing, that result, flawed as it may have been, will remain in history for a lot longer than a cost cap policy that is being, frankly, inconsistently implemented and by a governing body that has already lost far more credibility than it can afford to. While I completely agree with the cost cap as a principle, and I do think that we should carry penalties for breaches, I honestly don't trust the current structure or personnel within the FIA to uphold that process properly, and that essentially tarnishes the value of any decision that they do end up making, regardless of what happens here on October 10th. And I think, as I say, I'm not saying that we should scrap the budget or the cost cap. I think actually it's more important than ever for the playing field to be more level in Formula One. But what we need is a governing body, or perhaps even a third party, to manage this properly, to manage it effectively, and to manage it efficiently. Because what good is it for the sport and for fans of the sport all over the world to wait almost an entire year to change a decision as massive as who wins the world title? There is no bigger decision in the sport. Like, that is the pinnacle. That is what every driver, every team, every fan is, gunning for. And they're saying that from now on, we're not sure if the final decision is the final decision. It doesn't do any good for the sport. The credibility of Formula One and the FIA, broadly, they're not in a good place at the moment, and they haven't been for some time. And the more fans that the sport gathers, the more people that there are to question these bodies and these, goings on that they see week in, week out. And that can only be a good thing, in my opinion, but only if it results in some kind of meaningful change. I mean, yesterday, as we all awaited this decision from the FIA about the compliance certificates, we had negative trending topics like #CostCapping, #F1Fixed appearing on Twitter for the entire day, and essentially spreading bad news and negative press to the entire Twitterverse about the lack of integrity in our sport. And that must be repaired and it must be done quickly. And as far as penalising Red Bull for whatever breach they may have allegedly committed with the cost cap, the penalties should be future facing, not retrospective. If increased illegal spending on, let's say, research and development is what allowed them to pull out such a gap in performance in 2022, then R&D penalties should be imposed sooner rather than later, so that the same thing doesn't happen again for the 2023 car that is surely already in development. In other words, in my opinion, the penalties should apply to the areas where the advantage was gained, because that's the only way that you can measure the impact that the penalty is having in this really messy saga. Removing Max Verstappen's title from 2021 or removing him from the rest of this year's competition, say, would do immeasurable damage to Formula One as a sport and would call into question the value that it attaches to fans who spend increasingly large amounts of money following their favourite drivers around the world only to see them reprimanded for accounting breaches that their team may have made. How would it look for Max Verstappen to win the 2022 championship in Suzuka this weekend, only to find out on Monday that maybe he hasn't won it? You know, this is Abu Dhabi all over again. This is the delayed checking whether Sergio Perez had, you know, made an infringement in Singapore and whether he was going to keep the win of the Grand Prix or not. I beg of the FIA, can we please start getting these penalties and punishments right and implementing them effectively? It is the only way to sort out this mess. Thank you as always for watching. As I mentioned at the top of the video, every single new subscriber means so much to me, especially at this stage of my journey, so please do consider hitting that bell. I promise you won't regret it, and hit the subscribe button as well. And in the meantime, drop a comment down below on this video. Do you expect the FIA to make a decision even on October 10th? Are we going to get another delay? If they do make a decision, what do you think it will be? And do you think that Max Verstappen should be allowed to retain his 2021 title if Red Bull have been found to have made a breach of this cost cap? Me, myself and I would like to know, and we'll be hanging out together in the comments once this video drops. But until then, take care and enjoy your racing.